Yeah, you can have a seat. I want to say welcome to you. Welcome people here at Forney. Those of you joining online, want to say a special welcome to you. We're so honored to have you with us today. We are excited about things going on this summer. I know Stephen mentioned a lot of them earlier in the welcome time. I want to tell you about one other thing that's going on right now. We have women's Bible study that's going on this summer. Listen, we have over 650 ladies that are going to be a part of Bible study this summer. Is that not awesome? And so the good news for you here at Forney is it hasn't started yet. It's not too late for you to be a part of that group. I think we've got about 250 or so of those are going to take place here at the Forney campus, have an AM and a PM group. And so that starts Tuesday. You can go to CLiveC.com / I think it's /women. If that doesn't work, just start hitting keys and see what happens, okay? No, don't do that. That's not how the internet works, is it? But we would love for you to be a part of that. So we are in the middle of this series. Actually, not the middle. We're at the beginning. We started last week this series on the book of Hebrews. And so this is week 2. And, the book of Hebrews, really, there's a preeminent idea about it, and it's that Jesus is the GOAT. Okay, how many of you know the term GOAT? Like, you get GOAT, like, right? We all get GOAT. Anybody not get GOAT? Like, greatest of all time. Like, now, I want to say I think we throw around the term way too loosely these days. Like, would you agree with me? Like, we're way too loose in all of our superlatives these days. Like, that's the best of all time. This is the best group ever. And I just tell you that, like, we're like a legend. It has to be more than he got you a chili cheese coney at Sonic last night. That's not legendary status. And while I'm on my social media kind of advice, this isn't really part of the sermon. This is just for fun, like, right? Okay, this is just good free advice on your social media usage. Like, every post does not have to start with "we did a thing today." Okay, like. And if you did a thing, it has to be a big thing. It can't be like, "we did a thing today. We saw Top Gun Maverick." That's not a thing. Like, I like the movie. It's a good movie. Like, "we did a thing" has to be we bought a house, we had a baby, something like that, okay? And so, but the greatest of all time, we know the term. And there's not just one category of greatest of all time. There's like lots of categories of greatest of all time. Like, right, you can be the greatest of all time in a certain category. In fact, I thought we could take just a minute right here at the Forney campus and settle a few categories for everybody, for all the world. You're going to do that with me right now, okay? And so I'm going to give you some categories, and you're going to vote on them. So we got the cereal category. You got Honey Nut Cheerios or Cinnamon Toast Crunch. How many of you are Honey Nut Cheerios type people? Like, how many of you don't eat cereal at all? Like, you don't care. Like, just leave them both. How many of you are Cinnamon Toast Crunch people? I think you won. I don't eat a lot of cereal. Haven't eaten them in years, but I would go Cinnamon Toast Crunch just because when you get done with the cereal and the milk is left, that's like dessert, It's like, and so, okay, let me give you the next category. This one ought to elicit some emotion. Who do you got? Don't say Kobe. And so, listen, so how many of you would go Michael Jordan? Those are all the people over 55 right there. Like, how many of you are LeBron people? Like, Michael Jordan has been carrying it. I'm more of a LeBron guy myself, but anyway, go ahead. Next to that, wait, don't. Oh, we did it too early. I needed to prepare you for this because I know in Texas, like, this is iffy. This might get me booed or something. But In-N-Out or Whataburger? How many of you are Whataburger people? It's overwhelming. I got to tell you, I'm an In-N-Out person. Just based on price alone, okay? Like, for the price, In-N-Out beats Whataburger every day. Now, this next one, I'm not going to, listen, I'm not even going to tell you which way is right. I'm going to let you decide this for yourself, okay? Cats or dogs, you pick, okay? It's your choice. It's your choice. You choose as you may. Well, the book of Hebrews, listen, the point of the book of Hebrews is this, the point of the book of Hebrews is that Jesus is preeminent. Jesus alone is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. That's what the author is laying out the case for us for. He's saying, hey, Jesus is what it's about. And so have you ever wanted to turn back from something? Anybody ever wanted to turn back from something like you were looking forward to the vacation? You're going to, Florida's going to be awesome. You're going to 30A. It's going to be incredible. And you can't wait until you get like about 45 minutes in with your kids. You're like, maybe we should go back. Like this isn't, I don't know what it's going to be exactly, but it can't be worth 13 hours of this. Like, right? Like, you ever do that? Like you start driving and you're 25 minutes in and your kids are in the back going, Dad, how much longer? How much? Like, we're not out of Dallas. Like, we're still in Kaufman County here, okay? Like, give us a minute. And then they start with the fighting over who's on whose side, and it's too hot. No, it's too cold. It's too hot and too cold at the same time. Like, and you're like, can we just go back? Let's just go back. Or maybe you've had a DIY project of your own. And you got into it. Anybody ever do this? Like you start into it. Like one Saturday, you're watching HGTV, and you're seeing these houses being flipped, and you're like, man, I think I could do that. Like our bathroom needs some work like that. Like we've been wanting a new bathroom. And you go to Home Depot, and Home Depot, what's their motto? You can do it. We can help. Like you're like, and they convince you, like, no, you can do this. Like, we can help. Their help is going to be, we're going to sell you a couple of $800 tools. That's how we'll help. And you go home and you, like, discover, like, no, we can't do this. Like, we cannot do this. And you've torn apart some stuff. And so but you wish, like, I wish I could go back. Or maybe even in your Christian life. Maybe even your spiritual life, your faith journey. There's been times that you're like, man, this is harder than I thought. It's not like puppies and rainbows all the time. Wish I could just go back. And fortunately, we're not the first people to ever feel like this. And in fact, this book of Hebrews is addressed to some people that had that intention. They were thinking about going back. And so let me just read this to you, the first part of this passage. We're going to be dealing with chapter 3 primarily today. And if you don't know this, here's how we're addressing Hebrews. So we're working through this whole book in about 8 weeks. And honestly, we could spend 8 months talking through this book of the Bible. It's deep and there's a lot to it. And so we don't have time to read through every verse in this time. And so I would encourage you on your own. You can get extra credit if you do this. You can follow along, like on your own. You can read along with us. And so this week we're chapter 3. And so you might read through chapter 5 or so if you want to be ready for next week. But let me start us off here with verses 1 through 6. The writer says, therefore, holy brothers, you who share in a heavenly calling, consider Jesus, the apostle and high priest of our confession, who was faithful to him who appointed him, just as Moses also was faithful in all God's house. For Jesus has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses. As much more glory as the builder of a house has more honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. Now Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant to testify to the things that were to be spoken later, but Christ is over God's house as a son. And we are his house, if indeed we hold fast our confidence and our boasting in our hope. Now, I want you to notice that this passage begins with the word therefore. And so, in other words, he's tying it back to what he's just written, what he's just said. And what has he just said? The writer has just addressed the fact that we have a sympathetic high priest who took on our sins and became an offering on our behalf. And so he's saying, therefore, because of that, and he addresses the people, holy brothers. That term literally means saints. And some of you may be going, well, he's not talking to me then. I'm not a saint. Like if you saw my life, you'd know that I'm not a saint. But he's talking about a position that those of us who follow Christ hold before God. As a holy one, that means a called out one. It's not talking about necessarily how you live your life. He's talking about the fact that if you've come to a point in your life when you've confessed Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, you've crossed the line of faith, at that point, you become a saint. It's your position in Christ. That term holy literally means called out ones. And so he says holy ones. And then he says this, he gives them this commandment. You who share in a heavenly calling, he says, consider Jesus. Think about Jesus. And the word consider, I want us to talk just about the Greek for just a second. I know you don't care that much about the Greek. Nobody cares that much about the Greek. We don't talk about the Greek a lot. But it's important. It helps us to understand a little more about what the writer's saying right here. When he says consider, that word in the Greek is two words combined. It's kata naeo. Kata naeo. And so it's kata and naeo. And the word naeo means to think about. So it means to think about, but kata is an intensifier. So he's saying, hey, think about, but he intensifies the idea of thinking about. And so it's a commandment, and it means to literally to put your mind or your eyes upon. The word does not mean to have a passing thought about. Does it not mean to just like let it cross your mind? It means to consider attentively, to fix one's eyes or one's mind upon. He's saying fix your mind, fix your thoughts on Jesus. And it's a command calling for them and for us to do this now, to not delay. It's like if you're anybody, a parent of a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, and you go up to their room and there's got clothes everywhere, and you're like, hey, you need to pick up your clothes. And you go back downstairs, and the next day you come back by and the clothes are still there, and you're like, hey, you need to pick up your clothes. And you go down and you come back up, and the next day they're like, and there's, okay, I will, Mom, I will. And the next day you come back up and they're still not picked up, and you're like, hey, you need to pick up your clothes. And they're like, well, let me just finish this game. I mean, this has probably never happened to anybody else, but it's like, no, let me just finish this game. I'm like, no, I want you to go ahead and do it. Well, bruh. Like, bruh is not even a word. Bruh, can I just finish this game? This is after 3 days of that you go, pick up your clothes now. It's like past being a suggestion, it's a commandment. He's saying, do this now. Don't delay. The need is urgent. Fix your eyes on Jesus now. Consider Jesus. Think about him. Dwell on him. And you have to realize that the book of Hebrews, we don't know exactly who the writer was. There's some theories, but nobody really knows who wrote the book of Hebrews. We don't know exactly when it was written, but most experts agree it was written sometime between 65 and 69 AD. We know that it was written before 70 AD, and here's how we know. This is just for fun. This is just fun facts, okay? We know that it was written before 70 AD because in 70 AD, the temple was torn down. And so in the book of Hebrews, the writer refers to the temple still standing. And so we know that hasn't happened yet. But what had happened is that there was an emperor named Nero. And so it was written to these Jewish believers. So these were people that had grown up in the Jewish faith. They had grown up in the Jewish traditions. They had grown up adhering to the law, strictly following commandments and teachings. They were Jewish people who had come to know Christ. And now Nero's the emperor. And Christians are facing massive persecution. Nero was evil to Christians. In fact, there was a thing called Nero's candles. And what he would do is he would dip Christians in oil and light them on fire and watch them burn. And so these believers, these people that grew up in the Jewish tradition, they grew up following the law. All of a sudden now, they find themselves facing intense persecution, and a lot of them were thinking, and some of them were turning back, going, we should just go back to what we knew before. And that's what the writer is primarily addressing here. And so he goes on, and what he's saying is in the midst of this persecution, when you're tempted to throw your hands up and say, I just want to go back to what I knew in the past, fix your eyes on Jesus. And he calls Jesus the apostle and high priest of our confession. The apostle means the sent one, the one sent. The high priest is somebody that would represent the people to God. And he's saying Jesus fulfilled both of those roles. He was sent by God, and he represents us to God. In fact, that's the entire theme of the book, the theme of the entire book. How about that? If I can say it like that, the theme of the entire book is that Jesus is greater than. 11 times through the book of Hebrews, he uses the phrase Jesus is better than. 4 times he uses the term Jesus is superior than. 7 times he uses the term Jesus is greater than. So 22 times altogether, he says Jesus is either better than, superior than, or greater than. That's the idea that he's trying to make sure that we get. And why was he talking about this right here today in chapter 3? Last week he said Jesus is better than the prophets. And then he said he's better than the angels. And today he brings his attention to Moses. And he says Jesus is better than Moses. Now that doesn't mean a whole lot to us. But to people that had grown up in the Jewish tradition, Moses was it. Like Moses was the top dog. Moses was a hero. Moses was awesome. Moses was the one that led all the people out of Egypt. They had been captives for over 400 years. When Moses led them out of slavery, he was a big deal to the Jewish people. He was the central figure of the Old Testament. Moses spoke to God face to face, the Bible tells us. In Exodus 33:11, imagine that the Bible says that God would speak to Moses face to face like a man speaks to his friend. It's pretty cool. Like not a lot of those people, they got to have a conversation with God. Love it in Exodus chapter 4:3. Or chapter 4, when God meets Moses and calls Moses out of shepherding into his service. And you may know this story. Moses is on a mountaintop somewhere, and he's tending sheep, and God shows up, and all of a sudden there's a bush that starts burning on fire, but it's not burning up, and Moses is like, oh, what's that? That's kind of cool, and starts moving towards it, and God says to him to take off his sandals. You're on holy ground. And then he says, what's in your hand, Moses? Moses says, it's a stick. God's like, throw it down, Moses. Like when you imitate God, that's how we always imitate God, right? It's like, big, deep, throw it down, Moses. It's going to be awesome if we get to heaven and he's like, welcome. Glad you're here, you know. But it's awesome. I mean, Moses is hearing from God. In Deuteronomy chapter 34, it says, since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, starting in verse 10, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt to Pharaoh and to all his officials and to his whole land, for no one has ever known the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. Moses was it. Awesome. And the writer of Hebrews drops this truth bomb on him. For Jesus has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses. And when he said that, you didn't do it, but everybody in that audience went, oh, and then he makes the case for how they should know that Jesus is better than Moses. And in verses 3 through 6, he says, as much more glory as the builder of the house has more honor than the house itself. For every house is built by someone, but the builder of all things is God. He's saying Moses is created. Jesus is the creator. How do you know Moses is not as good as Jesus? Jesus is the creator. Moses is created. There's proof number one. Then he goes to proof number two. Moses is the servant. Jesus is the son. Look at verse 5. Now Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant to testify to the things that were to be spoken later. But Christ is faithful over God's house as a son. There were many Hebrew people who knew people that had servants. And the servant was always subservient to the son. The son always had higher status than the servant. And so the writer is saying, caution, you are elevating the servant above the son. Don't do that. Because we all know that being a son gets you special privileges, right? Let me just tell you 3 examples of the greatness of Moses. It's drawing from some Old Testament and New Testament stories, just so I can make sure that we're all on the same page here of how great Moses was. The author was not trying to denigrate Moses. He was not trying to take Moses down a few notches. In Exodus chapter 32, Moses goes up. Moses was the one who went up on the mountain, and God carved the 10 Commandments into the stone. Moses always represented the law, by the way. But Moses was the one that was up on the mountain. God carved these commandments, these 10 Commandments, into the stone. Then Moses is coming back down the mountain carrying the stone, and as he starts coming back down the mountain, he hears like there's a party going on, like the people are excited. Like, what's going on here? And then he notices what's happening. They've made a fake god out of gold. They made a golden calf, and they're all worshiping this golden calf. Moses is like, are you kidding me? I can't leave you people for any amount of time. This is the kind of stuff you do. You ever have that with your kids? Like, leave for a little bit, come back. It's like, what just happened? Did that one time, my oldest son, he was probably 17. Leave, come back, the microwave's destroyed. Like, what happened? It's like, well, I put this in here, and microwave was going, and there were sparks. I said, did you notice anything? Because, the microwave is like melted on the inside. Like that, you didn't think that was normal? He goes, no, we saw it. There were sparks going everywhere. I was like, well, you didn't stop it? He goes, no, I was recording it on a Snapchat story. Well, that's a $400 Snapchat story, son, But that's what Moses is like. Moses, by the way, he's preaching today at the Sunnyvale campus. Do what you want with that. But anyway, so Moses comes down and he's like, are you kidding me? And he throws the stone tablets down. And he goes to the people and like, I can't believe y'all would be doing this. And you know what Moses did? He grinded, destroyed the golden calf, and melted it down and took the shavings and threw the shavings in the water. And he said, you people are evil. Y'all drink that as your punishment. It's kind of psycho, isn't it? Like, drink the metal. That's what he did because he was so mad that they had worshiped a false god. There's another time a little later in the chapter, God's angry at them at this point because they've been involved in idol worship, and God is saying, I'm going to wipe them out. Take their names out of the book of life. And Moses says, don't do it, God. I'll tell you what, I'll give you my life instead. This was the kind of leader Moses was. He's like, take me instead, God. Luke chapter 9, there's another story that just emphasizes how great they saw Moses as. Luke chapter 9, you may know the story. Jesus is about to go to the cross. He takes 3 of his disciples, Peter, James, and John. He takes them up on the mountain, puts them over to the side and said, you guys pray here. You know what they did? They fell asleep. I love it. Makes me feel better about my own prayer life, right? Like, come on, anybody ever fell asleep praying? That's what they did. And then he wakes them up a little while later, or they wake up, and Peter wakes up and is like, what's going on? And he looks up, and Moses And Elijah is there next to Jesus. And Peter's like fangirling. It's like a 14-year-old at a BTS concert, you know? With me. Okay. Wow. I expect that reaction later on. See what I mean? This was not a plant, by the way. Like, I know you'd think that had to be plant. No, this is not a plant. That's what Peter was doing. He's like, wow, it's Moses. Moses was great. And if you read the rest of this chapter after he's convincing us how awesome Moses was, he tells us to do two things. The writer is telling him, I want you to do two things because of this truth, because of how great Jesus has been to you. The first thing that I want you to do is do not let your heart get hardened. Do not let your heart get hardened. How does your heart get hardened? I want to tell you two things that he mentions in the rest of this text that you're going to read later for extra credit. He mentions two things that will harden your heart. The first is an ungrateful spirit. In verses 7 through 11, he begins talking and he's quoting back their history about how when the Israelites were in the wilderness, he's actually quoting from Psalm 95, and he says, hey, remember when you were in the wilderness? And he's talking about them in the wilderness. And you know the story of the wilderness, that because of their disobedience to God, because of their lack of faith in God, that what should have been a 13-day journey turned into 40 years. It's a couple of bad wrong turns, right? And the Israelites were in the wilderness, and all they did was complain and murmur against Moses and God. Now think about this for just a minute. They had just been saved. They had been saved out of slavery. Somewhere between 1.5 and 3.5 million Israelites. They're in the desert. They don't have enough, there's not enough food supply in the desert or water supply in the desert, so God provided miraculously for them. He would just drop bread down at their feet. Every morning they would come out and there'd be a fresh supply of bread to eat. When the bread was getting a little old, he said, oh, let's throw some meat in. Started bringing quail. Every day, God would provide for them bread and quail. Experts would say this would require about 5,000 tons a day of food delivered for them. Every day, God would feed them. Every day, he'd give them water. Experts would say it would require about 10 million gallons of water a day. Did you know this? I didn't know this in my research for this. Did you know that the average American uses somewhere between 80 to 100 gallons of water a day? That's not a part of the sermon at all. I just thought it was miraculous. Like, by the time you get up in the morning and use the bathroom and brush your teeth and take a shower, some of you may use less than others, but anyway, 80 to 100 gallons a day, but God would miraculously provide it. And despite the fact that God had done all this on their behalf, you know what they did all the time for 40 years? They complained. They complained. Half the time, Moses was furious at them. Half the time, God was furious at them. Half the time, Moses wanted to kill him. Half the time, God wanted to kill him. God and Moses would have ever gotten on the same page, it would have been bad. Because they kept living. The reason why they didn't appreciate what was going on is because they were living in nostalgia. You read through it and they're just complaining all the time. Can't we just go back to Egypt? Egypt was so great. Oh, it was awesome. They fed us fresh fish every day. That fish in Egypt was amazing. But what about the whips? How were the whips? Did you like the whips? Like, you know, like you were in slavery. Don't you know people like that miss the goodness of God because they're living in nostalgia? Can I just tell you the good old days were not all that good? Like I hear people talk about it, back in the old days, you know, when I was growing up, it was just a much simpler time. I'm like, was it really? How'd you get your food? Well, you went out in the morning when the sun came up. How many of you were up when the sun came up this morning? Let's start there. He said you went out in the morning when the sun came up and you farmed the field and you milked the cows for milk. Like anybody milk cows as a hobby? Like you just go out, like today you're going to go milk some cows. You know why? Because it sucks. Like nobody wants to milk cows. You sheared the sheep to get some wool to make your clothes. Like, you know, how awesome was that? If you had to use the bathroom at 3:30 in the morning in the winter, you walked on the snow. Apparently it snowed a lot. Like you walked on the snow, you know, outside. I'm like, no, thank you. I mean, just think about it this way. There was no yellow line to tell you where the first down was in the Cowboy game. That right there is enough to take me out. No Amazon deliveries. I'm like, no, thank you. I like the conveniences of today. I'm so spoiled, I get mad when they tell me I have to put my debit card in the machine. Like, you don't have the tap? Like, come on. Is this 1940? Like, you know, like, you know what I'm talking about? And here's what I'm telling you. We can miss the goodness of God because we're living in nostalgia. We can miss, hey, what has God been doing in your life? Are you paying attention to the Lord's work in your life? Just think about that. God is dropping food on them every single day. They ought to be living every day going, oh, yay, God fed us. I mean, I'm sitting here, we're singing that song earlier, and we're singing this song about, you know, that bridge that says, hell lost another one, I'm free. Hell lost another one, I'm free. This wasn't in my notes, but I'm sitting here watching, and I'm just, don't take this a shot at anybody, but people are doing this, like, hell lost another one, I'm free. I'm free, you know, and I got my coffee, hell lost another one, I'm free. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Our hearts should be exploding with that truth. Like, hey, I was destined for hell. And Jesus took my place, and I've been set free to live for eternity. That's what the Israelites were guilty of. And he says that will harden your heart. The second thing that will harden your heart that he refers to in verse 13 is sin. In fact, I love it. He calls it the deceitfulness of sin will harden your heart. Your heart will be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. We could spend an hour on this, and we don't have very much time to dig into it, but can I just tell you, some of you are here and you think your sin isn't costing you, and it will always cost you. But one of the things it'll cost you is it will harden your heart. It'll harden your heart. The deceitfulness of sin. You know what that means? That means the deceitfulness means you don't fully understand the consequence. It deceives you. You're deceived into thinking this won't be a big deal. Maybe the biggest deal is when it hardens your heart. When you have a God of the universe that is pursuing you, that wants to have a relationship with you, that wants to walk beside and whisper to you every single day, but your heart is hardened because of your sin. There's a high price to pay for sin, isn't there, friends? And so he says, don't let your heart be hardened. And two, he says, don't give up. Keep moving forward. It says it twice in this chapter. In verse 6, he says, and we are his house, if indeed we hold fast our confidence and our boasting and our hope. It says it again in verse 14, for we have come to share in Christ, if indeed we hold our original confidence firm to the end. Don't give up. Keep moving forward. Is what he's saying. Now, there's a lot of debate about these verses, and we don't have time to explain all of it, but you can look at it for extra credit, and there's some different ways to take it. Let me tell you how I believe he's saying it. I don't believe he's saying, hey, if you hold on, if you can grab a hold and hold on tight enough, then you'll be saved. If you can hold on tight enough, if you can wrap your arms around and just cling to it and hold on, then you'll be made right with God. I think the writer is saying, hey, you've been made right with God, so you can hang on. Hey, you've been made right with God. God has changed your life. Jesus has transformed your life, so you can hold on to the end. Don't give up. Don't turn back, because God has a hold of you. See, our confidence is not in our ability to hold on to God. Maybe this is just for you today. Our confidence is not in our ability to hold on to God. Maybe you're here and you're going, I just don't think I can hold on anymore. That's okay, because our confidence is in God's ability to hold on to us. He's able to hold on to you. And the writer's saying, listen, because of how good Jesus was, hold on. Moses was a picture. He was a type. He was pointing us forward. But the real thing is always better than the picture. The real thing is greater than the picture. The real thing is superior to the picture. Why is Jesus greater than Moses? Remember those stories I told you earlier? Exodus 32, when Moses comes down and they're worshiping the wrong God. And he comes down from a meeting with God. And he comes down and he comes face to face with sinful humanity. Jesus did that too. Jesus was God, and he came down and came face to face with sinful humanity. And when Moses saw sinful humanity doing their thing, what does he do? He grinds up the golden calf, throws it in the water, and says, you drink it, you drink your punishment. Pointing us forward to a Savior who would come down and come face to face with sinful humanity and would say, I will drink it. I will drink your punishment. When Moses, a little later in Exodus 32, when Moses says, hey, God, don't kill them all, take me. You know what God says? Moses, you're not a sufficient sacrifice. I require a lamb without blemish. When Jesus stepped forward and said, no, don't take them, God, take me. God said, no, there's an acceptable sacrifice, because Jesus was better than Moses. And when they're standing on the Mount of Transfiguration, and Peter wakes up, and James and John are there, and they see Moses and Elijah and Jesus. They see Moses represented the law, Elijah represented the prophets. It was like this is what God said. These are the rules. These are the principles. And you got Jesus. And Moses, and you know what Peter did? I love Peter, because Peter makes you feel better about yourself. Peter, you know what Peter did? Peter said, Jesus, it's a good thing I'm here. It's a good thing I'm here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build 3 tents and memorialize the 3 of you. I'm going to build a tent for Moses, and I'm going to build a tent for Elijah, and I'm going to build a tent for Jesus. Isn't that awesome of me? Like a monument for the 3 of you. And you know what happened when he said that? The Bible tells us a cloud came over them. Like they were standing in the middle of a cloud, not like a little fog, like it was a dense cloud. They could not see anything. The Bible talks about their fear in that moment. And then in the big booming God voice, they hear this voice. The cloud's over them. It says, this is my chosen son. Listen to him. And the cloud moved away. And Moses is gone. And Elijah's gone. And it's just Jesus there. Hey, it's not Elijah that can save you. It's not Moses that can save you. Only Jesus can save you. That's what the voice was saying. Saying there's only one who can save you. And we will build no monuments. We will build no memorials to anyone else but to Jesus. Because he is better than the law. He is better than the prophets. And only he can save you. And the message from God in heaven couldn't be clearer to us today. It's the message that he was saying to Peter that day. It's the same point that the author was making to the Hebrew Christians 2,000 years ago. It's the same thing he's saying for you and I today. It's still valid for us today. Elijah is not my chosen one. Moses is not my chosen one. Jesus, my son, is my chosen one. Now listen to him. Follow him. Consider him. Set your mind on him. He is better than you think he is. He is better than you always hoped he would be. He's more present than you know. He's more caring than you can imagine. He's more active than you can see. He is the only firm foundation. He is the only anchor for your soul. He is the only way. He is the only truth. He is the only life. And he has never turned his back on you. So don't turn back from him.